Hello everybody, and thank you for joining another ILC Dover webinar. Today we're going to talk about ADCs and other highly potent substances and the containment of these. We're also going to look at Dover's full life cycle safety innovation. I'd like to thank Scott Patterson of ILC Dover for providing some of the supporting material here. I am Martyn Ryder of the Solo Containment Division based in Manchester, UK. Today, we're going to look at the full life cycle safety workthrough. We're going to look at transfer devices, and we're going to look at the elimination of cleaning. All these things we believe are absolutely essential in us winning that battle for safe containment in the workplace. A little bit about the ILC Dover Corporation. So ILC Dover is 70 years old. We are a company of 700 plus skilled employees with locations in Delaware, Houston, Texas, Juarez, Mexico, large manufacturing facility in Blarney Island. In Basel, Switzerland, we have our powder technology division, Jet Solutions. I'm talking from Stockport, UK, which is the Solo Containment office and factory. And then we have a very active team in Singapore covering the Asia Pacific market. So what is our full life cycle safety innovation? Well, Dover have been working on this for a number of years. We've got several steps. Now, let me talk you through these. The first thing is what we call the process score application evaluation. The process score is a risk and hazard assessment method that allows us to develop the isolator design or the containment solution design to more carefully fit your application's risk and hazard profile. Very, very important, because we want to make sure we've got the right technology on the isolation system. So even in a bad day, when maybe SOPs aren't being followed all that carefully, we've still got super safe levels of containment. Now, we put that into the next step, which is quality by design. We want to ensure that our design for the solution we're going to offer you is absolutely correct in terms of film selection, transfer systems, manufacturing automation, even things like how you get the product into the facility, then into the isolator, how you get the product out of the isolator. By defining all of these with our Q quality by design system, we're giving you a very clear specification and understanding of what we will be delivering, and that can be checked out later in the stages of the factory acceptance test. So the third step in our full life cycle safety innovation is manufacturing integrity. So ILC Dover are a powerhouse of flexible film manufacturing. To say that they put the space suits on the guys from NASA proves the integrity of Dover manufacturing. And every single flexible film isolator that they manufacture, either in Frederica or in Blarney or here in Solo in the UK, these isolator enclosures are pressure tested with positive pressure to about 10 times normal operating pressure. And this very rigorous pressure testing regime brings out any weaknesses we may find in welds or damage that nobody's seen during the manufacture. So our manufacturing integrity, we believe, is as high as we could possibly get in the field of flexible film manufacturing. The fourth part of our full life cycle safety innovation is our factory acceptance test. Why is this important? Well, we've gone through the process score, we've gone through quality by design, and of course we've just talked about manufacturing integrity. We want to make sure that before we deliver our containment solution to you, you can take a look at it, you can make sure it exactly matches the performance criteria that we've laid down, that we've agreed between us, and that dimensionally, containment performance, light levels, noise levels, etc., all meet your factory and facility requirements. Now, another great thing about factory acceptance testing is it allows us to develop safe SOPs with your manufacturing team. So rather than have the isolator turn up in your facility and people scratching their heads saying, well, what do we do with this? You bring your manufacturing team to one of Dover's global facilities, and there we work together. We show your people how to load product into the isolator, how to operate the isolator, how to collapse the isolator at the end of the campaign. And we believe at Dover that this factory acceptance test and development of safe SOPs is a real bonus in making sure that you get safe long-term containment performance from the device that we provide you. Now, after the FAT, the isolator's gone to your facility, we want to do a SME-PAC test. We want to prove the containment performance. We do this using SafeBridge as our specialist testing authority. We'll be using naproxen sodium as our surrogate API, and we'll be running the evaluation of the test samples to EN 689. EN 689 2018 requires that our containment performance is below 10% of the containment performance target. Not 50%, not 25%. Our pass-fail line is 10% of the safety yardstick that you set. During the SME-PAC test or the containment testing, again, we can develop operator training, because we believe that the hardware and the people who run the hardware, if you like, the software, the operators, there are definite links in attaining performance by having everybody working together in the correct procedures. Now, as part of our assurance to you that we're going to deliver long-term safety performance with our isolator technology, Dover have an automatic pressure decay cycle. So every time you're going into the facility to use the isolator, you press the pressure decay test, it runs a 90-second cycle, and it looks out for any leaks or damage in the flexible film isolator. If there are leaks or damage, it will say, failed test, do not use. And we believe this simple application of a negative pressure leak test on every run cycle is a very good way to confirm the isolator is safe for use. Now, the final two steps in our full life cycle safety innovation are to eliminate cleaning. We believe if we eliminate cleaning, it minimizes the exposure risk. And anything we do in your facility to minimize operator exposure to high potency APIs is a win in our book. So how do we eliminate cleaning? Well, we're going to look at some examples further on in this presentation. But we need to be able to securely transfer contaminated parts out of the isolator and then take the enclosure down, the contaminated enclosure down, leaving nothing behind that has any drug contamination on it. The last part in our full life cycle safety innovation is using the fan, the exhaust fan, to collapse down the contaminated enclosure. Again, it's another one of these simple systems that eliminates exposure risk. No leak paths exist. There's HEPA filters on the inlet and the exhaust side of the flexible enclosure. Therefore, no molecules of the high potency API can escape. So if we collapse it down so you can incinerate it, that's a big win from where we stand in minimizing exposure. Looking at it more simplistically, there are three phases in our full life cycle safety continuum: the solution development and the manufacturing side, the quality assurance and process startup, and the operation and single-use disposal benefits. Let's look at it a bit more pictorially. So, the process score. ILC Dover have developed a computer algorithm that allows us to look at the containment performance target, anywhere between 100 micrograms down to 10 nanograms. We look at the dust potential, dust generating potential of the product you're handling Is it not dusty? Is it very dusty? Is it somewhere in between? We look at the quantities of material you're going to handle, from grams to hundreds of kilograms. And then we look at the process. Is it milling, high velocity parts spinning around? Is it something very gentle like sampling? These 4 factors create on our algorithm a process score. The lower the process score, the more simplistic the isolator can be. The higher the process score, the more safety factors we've got to build into that flexible film isolator to bring up alarm conditions, to make sure we've got multi-stage HEPA filtration, and of course, this automatic pressure decay test. The process score and our very detailed site survey questionnaires give us a basic understanding of your application, so we can then proceed to quality by design. The design teams both at Frederica in the United States and here at Solo Containment in Manchester, UK, have got years and years of expertise behind them developing flexible film isolators. There is very few applications we have not conquered in our history working together. In image 3, you can see the high pressure integrity test at the Dover facility in Delaware. 10 times normal operating pressure is an extreme test of any flexible film enclosure. We do it day in and day out, and this guarantees to our customers that every isolator is the same performance, dimensionally perfect, and we de-snag everything before it gets to you. In the factory acceptance test, here is the opportunity to make sure all of the performance criteria meet the schedule that we've agreed together, and we bring in the operator training. In 5, you can see a typical SME pack test being conducted. People with the personal monitors on them, looking for any trace exposure during a realistic batch operation. So we will look at your manufacturing activities, replicate these with similar quantities of product, a product that is equally as dusty, and we'll work the isolator in just the way that you would during the SME pack containment test. The automatic pressure decay test. We have 2 systems here. We have what we call a quantum smart fan that does a negative pressure decay test, and they have a much more sophisticated system on the ACM manufactured by ILC Dover. When it comes to elimination of cleaning, we're now adopting many single-use incinerable parts, and this means no dismantling, no taking the isolator to pieces to take out HEPA filters, which would be contaminated. And this is a great safety step forward. If we can eliminate the cleaning by making the entire isolator a disposable kit, in our book, that's a massive win to add safety to your operations and to save you time and save any hang-ups you might have during an enclosure change. You get a complete kit from Dover, you use it, and you dispose of another complete kit from ILC Dover. Image 8, you can see a collapsed enclosure on the table. The table is completely free from any drug compounds. That collapsed enclosure can go into an incineration tote and it's gone. Just let me talk about typical flexible film isolator designs. So we need to create for you a secure and reliable containment bubble for your activities. Well, here in this image from, I think, 2014, we have a single-use isolator that was used for product charging into a process vessel. So you'll notice the flexible film base is sitting over the stainless steel table. The stainless steel ports at either side are attached by very long sleeves, so at the changeover point of the flexible film enclosure, none of these parts will have seen any drug contamination, and that means it's very easy and clean to change over, no cleaning validation, and it adds to safety. Just to bring to your attention, on this particular design, we had a PTFE transfer spigot that was considered single use, that carried the slide valve below the work table. You can just see there's a contained slide valve underneath there, and this was carried on a single use PTFE spool piece. This particular enclosure was inerted by a PAL clean pack filter with nitrogen, so it operated at a very low positive pressure. So obviously this is not suitable for high potency drugs, and it's limited to low hazard materials. Taking this a little bit further, here you see a more advanced isolator design. So here we're using a loading airlock to make it easy to get the product into the isolation chamber. Double zip, one zip on the front to put the drum of material in, close that zip, and then using the glove sleeves we open the inner zip and we can start to dispense the product as seen on the central image. So here the containment bubble is containing any API aerosol generated during powder dispensing, and of course that flexible film isolator will become contaminated. So we make this single use. We make it so the HEPA filters that do the filtration, the continuous liner port, every single contaminated component of that isolator bubble can be collapsed by fan vacuum and rolled up for totally safe disposal. No aerosol escape is possible because we've got H14 filters on all sides of it. Here's another example. Similar process, but this time we're targeting cytotoxic drug materials. This isolator is designed for adding cytotoxic powders into a compounding glassware vessel. The compounding glassware vessel sits on a raised lower platform at the near side end of the isolator, and here we've got an extra long sleeve that goes around the glassware vessel, so at the end of the operation that glassware vessel can be overbagged and taken away from the flexible film isolator to a cleaning station. Again, the entire isolator sits above the stainless steel table. So the table, the frame, and any active components involved in the manufacturing do not see any high potency API contamination. What any parts that do can be bagged out like the glassware through the extra length sleeve in the base. This particular isolator operates with 3 H14 HEPA filters, one on the inlet. The central HEPA filter goes between the airlock and the powder transfer chamber. And on the right hand side of the isolator, you'll see the exhaust HEPA. This exhaust HEPA is piped to the exhaust fan, where we have 3 electronically operated ball valves that control the automatic pressure decay test. So in this very simple design that is designed for single use, we've got extremely good levels of containment performance. That's the typical layout of the isolator. We can see the compact design, less than 10 feet long. The work chamber is about 5 feet long, and we've got gloves so operators can work from both sides. This isolator was tested in June of 1919 using the SafeBridge team in the UK, and as you will see, the actual performance characteristics we got from this single-use isolator were extremely good. Every single test run we took on the powder handling and static samples were below the limit of detection. This client opted for a previous version of EN689 where the pass-fail was 25% of the containment performance target, which in this case was 500 nanograms. So in all cases, the containment performance was sub-nanogram. Very exciting. We're very pleased about that. Yet a further development of this design is what we call the solo ADC. In some ways, it's a little bit more sophisticated in that we're trying to keep as many manufacturing components outside the isolator as we can. So you'll notice in the center of the isolator there's a square plate below the workdeck, and that is designed to carry a magnetic stirrer that will actually drive the stirring pod in a glass beaker or flask that is sat inside the isolator. So we're trying to, if you will, depopulate the working chamber so we have fewer parts to remove at the end of a contaminated campaign. The Solo ADC is designed for handling products with a typical containment performance target of below 10 nanograms. Extremely toxic materials, very, very dangerous, and with this sort of product we cannot afford to take any chances. So the control package for the Solo ADC, what we call the gassing tower, it's got various functional alarms on it. For example, the airlock has a proximity switch on it. Even though it's a flexible film zipper, the proximity switch on the airlock will go into alarm if anybody opens the airlock during the manufacturing campaign. The Solo ADC gassing tower runs the system at negative pressure, and it will allow the system to be gassed down to 0.5% oxygen content during a campaign if that is required. Let's go to the next slide. Now, just want to talk about how we get free contamination-free isolator disposal. This is a little time-lapse image. And what we're doing here is we're showing that at the end of a manufacturing campaign, when that flexible film isolator enclosure is potentially contaminated with an ADC toxin, we want to be able to get it off the frame without causing any positive pressurization of that flexible isolator. And using the fan exhaust, you can see how it collapses the isolator down very easily. Now we're just going to lift out the two-stage exhaust HEPA housing from the back. There it is. Slide the contaminated enclosure onto the trolley and take it for disposal. Very, very simple, very effective. In fact, this design was developed with our customer ADC Biotechnology based in Wales in the UK. We've manufactured 2 isolators for them in 2018. You can see our design has come on a little bit since then. In fact, we've got the gassing tower and different control valve technology. But even back in 2018, the containment test data we got from the Solo ADC was absolutely outstanding. So we have a containment performance target of 10 nanogram per meter cube, task specific. Our pass fail was 10% of that, so we had to be better than 1 nanogram per meter cube, task specific. Our customer wanted a very wide range of tests doing because we want to account for every potential adverse condition. So the first thing we did is we spent an entire day removing contaminated items through the continuous liner, and we deliberately put naproxen sodium parts, contaminated parts, into the continuous liner pouch. We shook it about, we made sure it was as dusty as possible, and then we heat sealed it off. We'll show you the heat sealer in a moment. But all 3 of the results, both personal and static, 3 runs, were below the limit of detection. So we were very, very happy. Then we did the typical toxin linker dispensing, and again, 3 personal results out of 3 runs, 15 static results, all below the limit of detection. Now, to really challenge the design, we wanted to do a power failure. So partway through the toxin linker dispensing, we pulled the plug on the fan, so all power to the isolator stopped. And yet again, all 3 of the personal results were below the limit of detection, and 15 of the static results, again, below the limit of detection. We then repeated this test using an induced containment breach. So this isolator had a peristaltic pump hose line transfer port in the end of the isolator, and into this we drilled a 12mm diameter hole, replicating if a glove would fall off, sorry, if a finger would fall off a glove, which is, I know, highly unlikely, but we put a 1 finger size hole in the end of the isolator. During the 3 test runs, of course, the fan went into alarm conditions. We got flashing lights and sirens, but we continued to dispense the product over each of the 3 runs. And yet again, all the 3 personal results were below the limit of detection, and 15 of the 15 statics, again, below the limit of detection. The final test we did over this 5-day test period was to do the contaminated isolator collapse. Now, after 4 days of testing with naproxen, it's fair to say that the film isolator interior was quite contaminated. So we used the fan vacuum collapse method that you saw in the time lapse there to collapse it down so we could take it off the table and put it into an incineration bag. And again, 2 of the personal results and 3 of the statics all below the limit of detection. For sure, it would have been nice to repeat this over 3 test runs, but the cost of the components made it a little bit prohibitive. Now, as part of our full life cycle safety evaluation, we're going to use the factory acceptance test to develop good SOPs. And our client, ADC Bio, really did do an excellent job with the FAT. So they had 5 people come down to the factory for the FAT. Instead of a typical 1-day FAT, I think it went over 4 days. Every single procedure was rehearsed by different people. It was recorded on video, it was written up. So they had a policy of, if you will, really benchmarking how to do every specific activity within the isolator, and as if they learnt it by rote. It was extremely good. Add to this the full disposal, the totally disposable features in the Solo ADC. You can see the HEPA filter housing on the left is made out of plastic. No changing the HEPA filters. The entire thing is disposed of. It's sealed to the flexible film enclosure. And the spill bund or spill tray in the main work chamber, 100 litre capacity, but it's made out of soft EPDM film, so it rolls up when the flexible film containment enclosure is rolled up. It doesn't hinder any compacting down of the volume because we're targeting the lowest possible volume for easy disposal. Here we have the heat sealer. There's a nice little video available from ILC Dover that shows this heat sealer in use. Now, why do I like heat sealers? Well, of course, crimping technology is common with many continuous liner systems. You know, crimping on a good day is extremely effective. Now, when you're dealing with ADC toxins and you're targeting a 1 nanogram exposure limit, that's pretty much like the sort of pollen haze you'd get on a bad hay fever day. You can't see it. With pollen, it would give you the sneezes. With an ADC toxin, probably the effect it would have on you would be far more harmful. So we need to look at a method of chopping down the continuous liner that is, if you will, bulletproof. And we've sourced a toxic dust heat sealer. The toxic dust heat sealer makes 2 weld lines, and there is a cut line right in between the 2 weld lines. If there's any residual toxin powders in that liner pouch when it's cut off, they'll be submerged in melted polymer. And on the video that we've just released, you'll see that when we swab test the cut off pouch that's heavily contaminated, there is nothing coming out. We're using a UV material, UV fluorescing material and UV light to prove there's no migration after the heat. Now, we've talked about several areas of what we call our full life cycle safety innovation. An isolator isn't going to be very productive unless we can get product in and product out. So what I want to talk about now is the various options to transfer products and materials through the containment bubble to make your containment bubble work for your process. In essence, this is part of our quality by design. So early on in our discussions with you, we'll have done the process score. We'll know exactly what size containers, batch sizes, and operational characteristics you have in your facility. That allows us to look at many of the various containment transfer types that are available. I'm going to go through a few. So one of the best established systems is getting a DPTE system. Some people call it an RTP, rapid transfer port. These have been around for about 50 years. They were pioneered for aseptic processing because they allow you to bring aseptic materials in a transit container into an aseptic isolator without the need for any interstitial decontamination. The lid of the transit container and the lid of the isolator door seal together so that any, if you will, microbial contamination in there cannot get into the aseptic isolator. Well, of course, here we are going to use this kind of DPTE system for getting products into a containment isolator running at negative pressure. So what are the problems? Well, one of the things you can see on the image on the right hand is that the interface flange on a DPTE is fairly complex. It's got to be. It's got to seal, it's got to latch together with the door, and if we get product powder into there, it will no doubt damage the seal points. And if you get excessive product on these seal points, eventually it compacts the powder and you get flakes of material coming out when you disconnect. So one of the golden rules with a DPTE system is there is never any loose powder inside that DPTE. If you've got materials in containers, pots, small drums or bags, they must be scrupulously clean before they go in there. So once they're presented to the isolator, as you can see on the central image, you dock that transit canister on, open the door in the isolator, bring your product through, and then you can process it. So very effective for low containment targets that we need to meet, but not very practical in terms of powder handling. Now, one of the very practical ways of powder handling is to use a split butterfly valve. Split butterfly valve technology has been around probably from the early 1990s, and there are several very good suppliers out there that make excellent technology. Split butterfly valves are available in sizes from possibly 2 inches diameter to 12 inches diameter. Lots of companies make them. Some of these are fully automated, so they dock, they open, and they close again at the end of the transfer. However, one of the things that you do find with split butterfly valves is that when the valve closes, it can take some residual powder with it, and you get what we call a compaction ring that you can see on the right-hand image. Now, various manufacturers claim this is not an airborne product, so therefore it's nothing to worry about, but there is physically some material occasionally compacted on the seal, and this may be a cause for concern. I believe most split butterfly valve manufacturers now offer some very effective either airflow washing or even liquid washing technology to reduce the impact of this compaction ring. Very good systems, particularly in the field if you're doing direct transfer of a product into an IBC bin, or you want to get product into a process vessel. Split butterfly valve technology is available with a wide range of solvent and chemical resistant sealing technologies, sealing gaskets, and it is very versatile for that chemical plant environment and indeed many other environments. So solid technology, very reliable. At ILC Dover, we have a partnership with the AVAC system, which is a very cost-effective single-use split butterfly system. I think this is limited to a 4-inch diameter port at the moment, which is about 100 millimeters in metric. One of the other popular transfer options is the contained slide valve. Now here you've got one of the popular designs visible in the images. The slide valve has the benefit that it can be single use, and it does give you a full bore transfer, available from 4 inches, I think, to 8 inches in diameter. It is good for transferring things like tablets or capsules where a split butterfly valve may damage or fragment product at the end of the transfer. Contained slide valve, as I say, operates within, it's got a full bore transfer, and many customers put a feeder funnel right down through the open valve before powder is applied to keep the internal surfaces completely powder free. Benefits: low cost relatively, single use in the injection molded versions, and fairly good containment performance. For many years in flexible film isolator technology, bag in, bag out canisters have been the norm, and these are still extremely effective. One of the great benefits of the BEBO canister is if you're operating in an inert gas environment, you do not dilute the gas environment by introducing air as you would with an airlock transfer system. So often seen in chemical plants where we're using inert atmosphere to suppress any ignition tendencies at a reactor charge or a vessel charge point. One of the downsides, however, of the BEBO canister is they're not 100% gas tight unless a zipper cover is added to the flexible film isolator. So very effective, a little bit of technique required to operate them. Crimping technology from Dover is an extremely well developed process. If, however, you do need to be in and out of the isolator more frequently with an easy transfer route, you can use a double zipper airlock, but I just want to point out that if you're operating within an inerted environment, the double zipper airlock will need a second purge system. As you can see in this image, we've got one purge system at the top left side of the isolator to purge down, gas saturate the airlock, and one on the right hand side to gas saturate the main work chamber. In this particular design, we can take the airlock back to 100% fresh air for safe loading of additional supplies at any point during the manufacturing campaign. This particular design was powered by an Allen Bradley PLC, and you can see the HMI screen there. One of the final parts of our full life cycle safety innovation is this elimination of cleaning. So let's look at some fairly good examples of how we can work towards this. For example, when we started our pathway with isolators for ADC manufacturing, some of our early customers were removing their electronic balances through a transfer sleeve liner to decontaminate them between batches. Now, with a product that's a 10 nanogram exposure limit, we didn't think that was particularly safe. So after doing some research, we found a very cost-effective two-place disposable balance. And on the left-hand picture, you can see the yellow fascia of this, called an A and D balance, manufactured in the United States. I think they're about $300 a time. So in this particular ADC isolator, we're using a battery-operated balance, which we consider disposable, and we're using a battery-operated magnetic stirrer. So all the manufacturing componentry, the balance, the stirrer, even the glassware, we're considering them consumables, so we don't have to take them out and do a cleaning task. Similarly, with the peristaltic pump lines, where once we may have used tri-clamps and a stainless steel base pan, we've now advanced our technology at Dover, so we're using fully welded in plastic peristaltic hose lines. We're using an EPDM soft film base tray instead of a stainless steel base tray, and all these steps are eliminating the need for cleaning, reduces decontamination risk, reduces the risk of an operator becoming contaminated during the cleaning. The base plates that sit above the EPDM liner, they're what we call a crack fold system. So these are 9mm thick plastic base trays that are machined 70% of the way through on the underside. So when you want to dispose of that contaminated enclosure, these snap down into extremely small parts to reduce the disposal volume. The heat sealable continuous liner is mounted on an incinerable plastic spool piece, which is clamped through the film. So at the end of the campaign, that lifts off. We class it as a consumable part. Not only does it reduce any risk of dismantling during strip down, it also saves time, because when you're putting your new flexible enclosure on, there you go, the liner's already mounted on the spool piece, ready to go, and you're in business more quickly. There we have a complete isolator assembly, a contaminated assembly ready for disposal. And this was at the end of the 5-day containment test. That flexible isolator fits into a 700-litre incineration tote. We have developed designs that will even fit into a 200-litre Mauser drum. So if we can get to work on the componentry, we can make the incineration very cost effective. But this is a partnership that we cover down at the quality by design stage. One of the things we've touched on here, by eliminating cleaning, by making our system single use, we believe we save our customers significant revenues during the course of a manufacturing year. Let me just explain. So supposing we've got a 100 nanogram containment product, one way of doing this would be to buy a rigid stainless steel isolator. Now, rigid stainless steel isolator for this kind of application, let's say the price is $775,000. The ILC Dover solo ADC isolator, to do that exact duty, would be about $70,000. So we've got a fairly huge price saving there. Now, let's focus a little bit on the consumables. The consumable costs on a rigid stainless isolator, we're thinking about HEPA filters, gloves, gauntlets, gaskets, seals. Let's say they come to $2,000 every campaign change. On a flexible film isolator, a little bit higher, a little bit more intense, because every single component is disposed of. So with a flexible film isolator, typical cost for the complete kit is $10,000. Okay, so seems a little bit expensive, but let's just look at the cleaning validation. With a stainless steel isolator, we've got 6 sides to clean. Okay, we've got beautifully coped surfaces, but stainless steel under an electron microscope is an extremely complex surface structure. And to clean this surface structure will take about 16 hours. It may take another 12 hours of lab analysis time to look at the swabs to make sure that the isolator is truly decontaminated between one batch and the next. And all of that cleaning validation work might take as many as 5 production days. So on a campaign change with a rigid isolator, you're probably going to lose 5 manufacturing days, which could be $100,000 a day, which is fairly conservative. That's $500,000. Now, with Dover's single-use system, there's no cleaning validation because every single part goes into the incineration tote. The change down time between getting that vacuum collapsed enclosure off the frame, putting a new one on, easily done within 1 working day, including the pressure decay test. So got about $500 worth of labor time there, but more importantly, you're back in production 4 days faster with the Dover system than you would be with a rigid stainless steel isolator. So the cost of production is a single day hit of $100,000. Now, multiply that up by 6 manufacturing campaigns in the course of a 12-month period, and The savings with the single-use technology are enormous. With a rigid isolator, you may lose 30 manufacturing days, which has a rack-up cost of over $3 million. With a single-use system, we're saving you 24 days manufacturing time, even with our perceived to be expensive replacement kit. The total cost for operating over 6 campaigns is, say, $663,000. Huge, huge saving. So our conclusion. We believe that a well-designed flexible film system, containment system, delivers equivalent, if not better, containment performance than a hard shell isolator. And because we back up our flexible film technology with this full life cycle safety innovation, we manage the complete risk profile, from assessing the risk and hazard at the outset with our process score, quality by design by using our years and years of experience and expertise to leverage the best solution for your application. And then, of course, we've got long-term reliability. Hard shell isolators need maintenance. Single-use flexible film, it's new every time. You take it from the 3-layer pack, you put it on the frame, you do the pressure decay test, you run it, you collapse it, you incinerate. We believe there is a massive, massive benefit in single-use technology. So, my friends, in conclusion, at ILC Dover, we believe our full life cycle safety approach sets a new bar in the field of containment technology, because from the very beginning to talk to you about your application, to going through the factory acceptance test, to partnering with you on SOP development, and then we've got all of our very neat disposal systems, we think we're adding layer upon layer of operator safety in your facility. So I hope you've enjoyed this webinar, and may I just thank you for your attention.